There has been so much Football Manager news dropping lately that it's difficult to keep on top of things. So in today's video, we are going to talk all about confirmed things for FM26, leaks that have happened over the last year, and then we're going to talk about stuff that we don't know about yet. Removed game modes, international management, there's a World Cup next year. Surely it has to be in. Right? Yes, folks, how is it going? And a warm welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am Work the Space, also known as Jack. We've been on the internet for 10 years talking about Football Manager, and FM26 might just be the most anticipated. So just as a little recap, FM26 will consist of the PC version, the console version, Touch for the Nintendo Switch, and also FM26 Mobile, which is releasing exclusively on Netflix. And of course, as was confirmed last week when we got the official announce of FM26, the game is going to be launching globally on November 4th. And if you're on PlayStation or Xbox, you can also expect on that date, although pre-orders haven't yet gone live. As for those of you that play on Nintendo Switch and mobile, that's going to be dropping a little later on the 4th of December. And of course, one of the big headline features this year for Football Manager is the move to the Unity engine. The way to think about this, and I can't remember who came up with this analogy, but it's a great one. Football Manager is a tree house in a tree, and the Football Manager match engine, it's the treehouse, and it's sat in a tree, and it's evolved and it's got better over time, but the tree has slowly got rotten underneath the treehouse. And this year's Football Manager is essentially about moving that treehouse into a new tree so that it's set for the next 20 years. And for those not aware, Unity is an engine widely used in the video games industry. A lot of mobile games use it, but plenty of PC games do use it too. And it's been a pretty monumental effort to move 20 years of Football Manager to work in this new engine. And Football Manager and Unity have worked together on a load of brand new user interface technology that's never been used in any other Unity game before. And as was confirmed over on the Football Manager forums by Ed, who is a developer at Sports Interactive, the match engine has not been rewritten from the ground up, because it would take 10 years, and the core simulation is independent from Unity and can run without it. Where the integration comes is the visualizations and animations. So the way to think about it is the video game logic that makes up Football Manager's AI, both in matches and I assume also transfer logic, player happiness, all that kind of stuff, that's not been rewritten and rebuilt from the ground up. That doesn't mean that the match engine won't see improvements. I've seen some people suggesting that this forum post confirms there is no match engine upgrades this year. That is far from that. Essentially expect with the match engine similar improvements to we see year on year with Football Manager, minus the fact, of course, we've had 2 years without a game, and there might actually be some significant changes coming. We're going to talk about those in the leaks section of the video. Now, PC specs for Football Manager have been confirmed for both Windows and Mac. You can find these over on the Steam page. But if you were wondering kind of the minimum specs, the kind of GPU that we're talking about here for the graphics, which is a GTX 960, that is a pretty old GPU at this point. In fact, the recommended GPU is actually like 5 years old at this point. And in terms of the processor, processors that are 15 years old are also supported when it comes to Windows machines. I suspect that if you're happy playing in 2D, the game is likely to still run on your toaster. And for those of you on Mac, here are the current system specs confirmed on the Steam page. It has also been confirmed that Advanced Access will be coming to the game. Of course, historically, this is 2 weeks, give or take, early access to Football Manager. So if you're playing on PC, on Steam, Epic, or the Windows Store, you are going to be able to play the game about 2 weeks before the 4th of November. If we do want to speculate a little bit, if it is coming out on the 4th of November, it's very likely early access is going to be starting around the 20th or 21st of October. Occasionally they do launch it before the weekend, so if you want to be really ambitious, maybe the 16th, but I'm suspecting it will probably be the 21st or 20th of October that early access begins. And of course, if you buy the game through any SEGA approved retailer, you will get early access, including the sponsor of today's video, Fanatical, who you can get a Steam key via. Football Manager 26 is nearly here, and with Fanatical, a SEGA-approved retailer, you can pre-order for cheaper than Steam or Epic Games. Just hit the link down below or on screen and lock in your discount using the code WTS, plus get that early beta access. The deal runs all the way to launch, so don't miss it, and thanks to those of you that have used it for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the video. And another bit of news for those of you that maybe didn't pick up FM24, or maybe you've still got an FM24 save game still on the go. Save game compatibility for FM24 and FM23 is going to work with FM26. So if you're nostalgic for one of your older Football Manager saves on FM23, 3 years in the future from starting it, you're going to be able to continue it in FM26. Now, as of the recording of this video, there were 2 videos dropped by Sports Interactive recently. One was the Matchday experience, which showed us our first look at the 3D match engine in Unity. Admittedly, we didn't see much beyond the graphics engine itself. We didn't see the tactics screens or between highlight stuff, but an idea for what to expect visually from the Unity engine move. And the other update, of course, that we had was to do with the user interface. I've already talked about this in its own deep dive video. The video itself is a 4-minute look at the UI. I will remain critical of the fact they didn't kind of just show some raw, uninterrupted gameplay, but it does look like FM26 is kind of taking the game in the same direction we're used to, but with a very, very modern twist. As part of this video, we learnt about FMpedia, which is basically a Football Manager encyclopedia inside of this tool in-game. You're going to be able to look up key footballing terms used throughout Football Manager. Could be great for newer players. And of course, we got our first look at the portal, which is basically the new inbox screen merged with a home screen to give you a nice overview of your save game as you play. And of course, if you weren't aware, the Premier League is fully licensed in this year's Football Manager. For the first time ever, no graphics packs needed, logos, faces, all the Premier League branding and stuff, it's going to be present in-game. Now, of course, another thing that we've known was planned for Football Manager for a few years now, but finally it is coming in FM26, is women's football. We don't know which leagues are going to be available yet, but there are some hints out there, including the fact that Angel City, with all their branding, are present. Of course, they play in the NWSL. I am wearing a San Diego Wave shirt right now. I'm hoping the entire league's licensed. We'll talk about a bit more info on this in the leak section too. A big thing to note with women's football is it is going to integrate into Football Manager much like loading an additional league would if you were playing in a men's save game in FM24. It is not going to be a separate game mode, so you could start a save game managing a men's team and move to a women's team. I guess there'll be some staff movement there. Just don't expect anything like FIFA Ultimate Team where male and female players are playing against each other. That's not a thing. And at the time of recording, that is what we officially know about FM26. Now let's get into the juicy stuff, shall we? Now, it's pretty unusual for us to get leaks directly from Football Manager, but thanks to FMDB, there's been a few recently. For those of you that don't know, FMDB is a kind of splinter project that Sports Interactive have been working on, where they're looking to monetize the Football Manager database and sell it to teams and individuals within the footballing world. But there's been some stuff posted on this website that probably shouldn't have been posted. And well, unfortunately for whoever runs the FMDB website, they left the translations.json file visible for the public to see, and within this, there was a load of unusual player roles listed. Now, I'll admit here, this is the raw file, which looks like an absolute mess. There's a nicely formatted version I'm going to show you in a moment. But this actually wasn't our first glimpse into the fact that we might be getting lots of new player roles in the next Football Manager. And that is because back last year in 2024, Sort It Out SI posted on the 25th of September these screenshots showing all new in-possession roles, and then there was a second screenshot showing out-of-possession roles. Key things to note here, doesn't appear to be any duties anymore, if this is true. And on top of that, there is a load of new roles, and it seems like tactics in Football Manager are basically being split into your shape when you have the ball and your shape when you don't have the ball. Now, you'll note in the in-possession roles here, there's a role here called Channel Forward. That is important. Note that for in just a moment. And that was further reinforced when the first screenshots of FM25 were released, and over on the Steam page, the Frank Kirby page had some weird issues. Firstly, it had the height of Evan Ferguson, who was in another one of the screenshots, which makes me think these screenshots were somewhat cobbled together. But if we look over in the player role screen, you can see alongside the likes of False 9 and Deep Lying Forward that we're very familiar with, there was also the Channel Forward role, which we saw in that previous leak. Now, worth noting, this screenshot was released 5 days after that post on Twitter by Sort It Out SI, seemingly soft confirming these roles. Now, like I already mentioned, there was a translation file found on the FMDB website. It was actually first posted to the Sort It Out SI forums, but if there's one thing I've learned, if a legitimate leak gets posted on those forums, it vanishes very quickly. So if you ever wonder if you see something on the SI forums and it goes poof, probably legit, but the good news is people were able, as I mentioned, to get a copy of the translation file, including all the different roles. We can see it here on the Sort It Out SI website. We can see a nice list of all the roles by position. So a lot of centre-back roles, but if they are going to be split across in possession and out possession, maybe going to end up having slightly less options than in FM24. And for all the sources that I have for different bits and bobs in this video, I will be linking them down below so you can check them out yourself. Now, when we did get our first look at FM26 user interface, they did share some player profile screens. Interesting thing to note here, there were two new player roles, wide forward and playmaking winger. We can see in that translation file, the wide forward role was in kind of as part of that, but also the wide playmaker role existed. So it wasn't called a playmaking winger. I suspect this was just a change in player role names, but it does suggest that maybe the roles that leaked in the translation file aren't 100% set in stone. And one other little curiosity to note, over on Twitter, I spotted this, I'm sure some other people spotted it too, but when they did the user interface overview video, at 50 seconds they showed the matchday and overview screen, and there were two pictures present, which is a little bit curious, especially because you can kind of read through the blurred text. It's saying that no tactic selected, and then set pieces, opposition instructions, and penalties. I assume this was just this kind of bar at the top here, kind of being written out blurred. But the fact there's two pictures side by side, which seemingly, just by the bits above, represents just your team, would seem to reinforce the idea you'll have two different ways you set up your team with and without the ball. So yes, in possession and out of possession roles, let me know what you think of those down below. I feel like there's too much smoke without fire for this not to be legit, so I'd expect us to hear something about this in the very near future. Now, the second little bit of leak/speculation is to do with the women database size, and the first thing that we're going to look at here, again, comes from FMDB. So shout out to FMDB for giving us more kind of news indirectly from the horse's mouth, and a big thank you as well to FM Console here. He actually provided me his raw recording of these web pages that were unintentionally available and have since been nuked off the FMD website. But as we can see here, looking at the FMDB stuff, basically it gives you a list of all the different men's and women's leagues that were playable. The total number of players in the women's database, including staff, was almost 34,000 at the time of this recording. And whilst the leak suggested it'd be 34,000 people added as part of the women's database, we can see, according to an interview that Miles did with The Athletic, there's going to be 35,000 women's footballers rated ahead of their planned inclusion. That is more players than EAFC have in their entire database, and that is just women footballers for the first edition of it in Football Manager, which I think is absolutely crazy. Like I said, this is kind of a leak in terms of it was leaked via FMDB, but Miles has seemingly soft confirmed it. Little bit interesting. And whilst we're on the subject of women's football, another slightly embarrassing mess up for Football Manager came on their webpage, where they have a list of all the different news going on with the game. Under the women's football section here, this picture wasn't this picture for a little while. And I do have to give a big thank you to Sai Maggio, the fellow kind of Football Manager creator, for providing me this image here, because he found it. Yeah, they accidentally put a Women's Super League 3D match engine screenshot on the page. So this is our first example of what women look like in the 3D match engine. Obviously, we can see as well at the top here, the Barclays Women's Super League official logo there. So I guess this is soft confirmation of potentially, I say potentially, it feels pretty certain, doesn't it? This is from the Football Manager website. Our first licensed women's football league is going to be the top flight of English football. The last of these leaks is to do with leagues being added to Football Manager, and there has been a few new Football Manager X accounts popping up. This one for the Middle East and North Africa stands out to me as a little bit odd. Now, to be fair, it did pop up during the FM25 life cycle, but it did pop up at announce, which is a little bit curious. I think maybe this was something planned for FM25, but the fact they're supporting the Arabic language in FM, I think, is news. And it is perhaps worth noting that over on the Football Manager Steam page, Arabic is now an officially supported language. With FM24, we saw Japan added for the first time to Football Manager, and that coincided with the Japanese language being added. I don't think it's the craziest in speculation to suggest that we could be getting some leagues in North Africa and the Middle East added this year. It'd be a little bit weird with the new X account for them to include North Africa in the naming convention if there was no intention on targeting North Africa in some way. Obviously, there's the likes of Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco, and of course, Morocco had a crazy run in the most recent World Cup. Growing footballing nations, I say growing, they're dominant in the context of Africa, but in terms of, you know, the fact they're not represented in Football Manager, it's a little bit weird. I feel like they'd be really good additions to the game, and based on what we're seeing here, it kind of makes sense if they were to be playable. There has been posts popping up on social media speculating over these leagues, and I'm not sure if these are direct leaks where maybe researchers have let slip to people and they've then posted on Facebook groups, or if it's just people speculating like I am. But I'm seeing a lot of talk about some of the nations in North Africa. We've talked about Saudi Arabia, the UAE, which curiously is the location the MENA Twitter account is set to be based in terms of where its location is. And I have also seen some talk of Lithuania. Bit of a random one to throw in there. There is one other that I've heard of, but I've only heard it from one source, so I can't verify it. But if it does come in, it will have 2 tiers playable. I don't know. Maybe I'll be right in 2 months and I can point at this video. I'd be very, very interested to know down below what leagues would you like to see added as playable in Football Manager. Anyway, that is it for leaks. Now let's discuss stuff that we don't know about yet, the unconfirmed bits and bobs. And for this, we are going to go back to an FM25 development blog that released in September of last year, where they basically announced that they were removing a load of stuff from the game. Now, of course, the big bit of news here was international management being removed from Football Manager 25, and they did actually say the plan was for it to come back for FM26 in a more feature-rich way. Of course, the difficulty with recent development of Football Manager maybe leaves it a little up in the air as to what's it actually going to look like in FM26. The fact we've not heard anything about FM26 having international management yet has me a little bit worried. But at the same time, we are in a World Cup year, so if there was no international football added to the game, it'd be a little bit mad. It could be maybe that it comes later after launch. Of course, with FM24, they added versus mode in as kind of a mid-game drop. Is there a world where we get to springtime and we get kind of the international management update ahead of the World Cup? I feel like that might make more sense in my mind, depending, of course, on how development on FM26 has gone, especially given the fact they committed to adding it in for FM26 in this FM25 blog. I'd be shocked if it's not in, if I'm being completely honest. Now, there were some other game modes that Football Manager confirmed weren't going to be in FM25, including versus mode, draft mode, and any kind of challenge mode. Obviously, the plan when they removed those announced was it'll come back in a future edition. I don't think they're going to be coming back for FM26. The other thing that we don't know about just yet is the extent of the modability of FM26. Of course, we're used to having skins, face packs, the ability to share tactics and other files, be that via the Steam Workshop or just on Football Manager fan sites. With the move to Unity, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some complications there. Of course, I help make the WTCS skin that loads of you guys use. I can tell you now that skinning in Football Manager is basically built on a foundation of 20 years of knowledge. We're going to be starting from kind of ground zero when the new game comes out and it's all moved to Unity. I'm certain over time there will be some mods developed. Hopefully some skinning possibilities will be out there. But if you're expecting like 10 different skins to release in the first 2 weeks of the game being out, I think you might be disappointed. And of course, the other 2 things that we don't really know about yet are the extent of tactical changes, if there are some coming to the game. Obviously, the in and out of possession roles do sound like they could be revolutionary, and at this point, I think it's safe to assume they are going to be coming in some capacity. What is going to be interesting to see, though, is there going to be other options and other changes accompanying that? And the final thing that we don't really know about yet is the extent of new licenses to the game. We already know that the Women's Super League, which is the English Women's Football League, is in the game. Are we going to see the NWSL added for the North American kind of side of things? Are we going to see some more European women's leagues added, fully licensed? Certainly hope so. You know what? You couldn't make it up. Right as I'm sat here recording the video, Football Manager 18 minutes ago, posted some news about women's football coming to Football Manager. And in this video, they confirmed there's 14 leagues being added. They've got them highlighted here. So we've got Italy, Germany, France, Spain, the UK, North America. I think there's a few more going to light up here. There are Denmark and Sweden are added, Australia and Japan. 11 nations, 14 leagues. There's going to be a few where we get various tiers. If I was going to speculate, I would guess the WSL and then the Championship, the league below in England will be active. Maybe the top 2 leagues in France and Germany too. And the reason I speculate on France and Germany is the fact that there were some job listings 2 years ago where Football Manager were looking for head researchers for both Germany and France. And within these applications here, you can see they actually specifically mention the second tiers of France and Germany. So, yeah, I'd assume that those alongside England are the leagues that'll have more than one tier. I'm now paranoidly refreshing the Football Manager Twitter account to make sure there's not more news I'm missing out on. I can confirm that is it for today. I would absolutely love to know down below your thoughts on FM26 and what we know about it so far. If you've got any of your own speculation to add to the speculation fire when it comes to stuff that we don't know about or the various leaks out there, let me know that down below. And as a little reminder, if you want to pick up the game, use my link down below to get it from Fanatical. You get it cheaper than on Steam or Epic Games or the Windows Store. You get early access confirmed. They're a Sega-approved retailer, and it does also help support the channel. Anyway, today's video has been a monstrous one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go down below, leave a like. Until next time, it's me, Jack. I'll be back with more FM news soon, I'm sure, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.